Have you ever ignored your instincts because your GPS promised a faster route? I wish I hadn't, because what happened that night still doesn't exist on any map, and I still refuse to drive alone after midnight. My name is Ethan. Last October, I was driving back to Seattle after spending the weekend with my younger brother in rural Montana. It was supposed to be a simple 6-hour drive. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous, just hundreds of miles of empty highway. By the time I reached the interstate, the sun had already disappeared behind thick storm clouds. Rain began falling softly. Within minutes, it became a downpour. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up. The highway was almost completely empty. No trucks, no headlights, no taillights, just endless darkness, and the rhythmic sound of rain hitting the roof of my car. I turned on the radio. Static. Every station was nothing but static. I sighed and kept driving. Then, my phone lit up. My GPS spoke. A faster route has been found. You'll save 18 minutes. Normally, I never accept shortcuts at night, especially in places I've never been before. But I'd been driving for nearly 4 hours. My back hurt, I was exhausted, and 18 minutes sounded tempting. Without thinking, I tapped accept. The blue route immediately changed. It directed me toward exit 43. As soon as I left the interstate, everything felt different. The road narrowed into a quiet 2-lane highway, surrounded by enormous pine trees. The rain somehow grew even heavier. It was so dark that my headlights barely reached beyond the next few yards. Still, the GPS calmly guided me forward. Continue for 37 miles. 37 miles? Without a single turn? That felt strange, but I kept driving. 5 minutes later, I looked at my phone. No signal. Not one bar. I wasn't surprised. I was deep in the mountains. What surprised me was that my GPS was still updating perfectly. Every few seconds, the little blue arrow moved smoothly across the map, almost as if it wasn't relying on a signal at all. I shook the thought away. Maybe offline maps. Maybe I'd downloaded this area without realizing it. I kept driving. The forest became thicker. The trees leaned over the road like giant shadows. Occasionally, lightning illuminated the woods for just a split second. Every flash revealed endless rows of silent trees. Nothing else. Or, at least that's what I thought. Around 20 minutes later, I noticed something. A red pickup truck. It was parked on the side of the road. Its hazard lights blinked slowly through the rain. Blink, blink, blink. There was no driver, no movement, no one asking for help. I slowed down. For a moment, I considered stopping, but something about it felt wrong, so I kept driving. The GPS repeated in its calm, robotic voice. Continue straight. 10 more minutes passed. The rain never stopped. The road never turned. The trees never ended. Then, I saw it again. The same red pickup truck. Same faded paint. Same cracked rear bumper. Same blinking hazard lights. Parked on the exact same side of the road. I frowned. Maybe there were 2 identical trucks. It wasn't impossible. Still, a strange feeling settled in my chest. I checked my mirrors. Nothing behind me. Nothing ahead of me. Just me. And that truck. I drove past it again. This time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The driver's door was slightly open, just a few inches, swinging gently in the wind. I pressed the accelerator. I didn't want to know who or what had left it there. My breathing became heavier. The GPS remained silent, almost too silent. Another 15 minutes passed. Then, the truck appeared again, exactly the same place, exactly the same blinking lights. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. No, I whispered. That's impossible. I slammed on the brakes. The tires skidded across the wet pavement. For several seconds, I just sat there, listening to the rain, listening to my own heartbeat. Finally, I stepped out of the car. Cold rain soaked through my jacket instantly. The truck sat only a few feet away. Its headlights were off. Its hazards continued blinking. Blink, blink, blink. I slowly walked toward the driver's door. The inside of the truck was completely dark. I couldn't see anyone. Hello? No answer. I took one more step. The driver's door slowly creaked open on its own. Inside, the seat was empty, but it was soaking wet, as if someone had been sitting there moments earlier, completely drenched. A freezing chill ran through my entire body. I backed away, turned around, and sprinted back to my car. My hands were shaking so badly that I nearly dropped my keys. I slammed the door shut, locked it, took a deep breath, then looked at my dashboard. The digital clock read 12:18 a.m. I grabbed my phone. 12:18 a.m. I checked my wristwatch. 12:18 a.m. Every clock had stopped at exactly the same time, and before I could even process what I was seeing, the GPS suddenly came back to life. In the same calm voice, it whispered, "Continue straight." For almost a full minute, I couldn't move. My hands were locked around the steering wheel. The rain hammered against the windshield. Every clock around me still read 12:18 a.m. I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe the storm had damaged my electronics. Maybe I was just exhausted. Then, the GPS spoke. "Continue straight for 1 mile." Its voice sounded different, not robotic anymore. Slower, almost human. I swallowed hard. Every instinct told me to turn around. I shifted the car into reverse, slowly pressed the accelerator. The car rolled backward only a few feet. Before stopping, I pressed harder. Nothing. The engine revved loudly, the tires spun, but it felt like something behind the car was holding it in place. I looked through the rear window. Nothing. Just darkness. Finally, I put the car back into drive. If this road ends, I'll leave. That's what I kept telling myself. 1 mile. Just 1 mile. The forest became unnaturally quiet. The rain was still falling, but somehow, I couldn't hear it anymore. The windshield was covered in water, yet there wasn't a single sound. No rain, no wind, no engine, nothing. The silence felt wrong, like the entire world had been muted. My heartbeat was the only thing I could hear. Thump, thump, thump. Then, the headlights illuminated something ahead. An old iron gate, tall, rusted, half open. Beyond it, a narrow dirt road disappeared into complete darkness. No houses, no lights, no signs, nothing. The GPS announced, "You have arrived." I stared at the screen. Arrived? I had never entered a destination. I grabbed my phone, opened the navigation app. The destination field was completely blank. There wasn't even an address, just a blinking blue dot, sitting exactly where my car was. A cold shiver ran down my spine. "No," I whispered. "This isn't happening." I immediately turned the steering wheel, trying to make a U-turn, but when my headlights swept across the road behind me, my stomach dropped. The road was gone. There were no tire tracks, no pavement, no highway, only endless trees, as if the road I'd driven on for nearly an hour had never existed. I blinked, looked again. Still, nothing, just forest, completely surrounding me. My breathing became faster. I unlocked my phone again. Still, no signal, not even emergency calls only. I tried restarting it. Nothing changed. Then, 3 slow knocks echoed through the car. Knock, knock, knock. Not on my door, not on the windshield, on the passenger side window. I froze, very slowly. I turned my head. Nobody. The window was covered with rain. Nothing stood outside. I forced myself to breathe. "It's just a branch," I whispered. "There are branches." Before I could finish the sentence, 3 more knocks. This time, behind me, on the rear passenger window. Knock, knock, knock. I spun around. Empty, completely empty. The forest stood perfectly still. No animals, no people, no movement. Then, my dashboard flickered. The GPS screen went black. For several seconds, nothing appeared. Then, white letters slowly faded onto the screen. "Thank you for bringing him." I stared at the words. What? Bringing who? Suddenly, a loud metallic click echoed beside me. I looked toward the passenger seat. The seatbelt had just locked itself, as if someone had fastened it. The seat cushions slowly sank, only an inch, but enough to notice. Something was sitting there. I couldn't see anyone, but the car suddenly felt heavier. The suspension lowered slightly. Then, very softly, I heard breathing, slow, wet, only inches from my shoulder. I didn't look. I couldn't, because deep down, I already knew. If I turned my head, I wasn't going to like what I saw. I couldn't breathe. The passenger seat was empty. But it wasn't. The seatbelt was locked. The cushion was pressed down, and that slow, wet breathing was getting closer. I kept staring straight ahead. Every instinct screamed at me, "Don't look." Whatever was sitting beside me didn't want to be seen, it wanted to be noticed. The breathing stopped, complete silence. Then, the GPS spoke again, not in its normal voice. This time, it sounded almost like a whisper. "Drive." That single word snapped me back to reality. My foot slammed onto the accelerator. The engine roared. Nothing happened. Again, the tires spun against the wet ground. Mud sprayed everywhere. Then suddenly, the car lurched forward. I shot through the rusted iron gate. Metal screamed as it bent around the front bumper. Branches scraped violently across both sides of the car. I didn't slow down. I didn't care where I was going. I just drove, as fast as I could. Then, the sound returned. Rain, wind, the engine, everything. It was as if someone had pressed the unmute button on the world. I looked at my dashboard. The clock changed. 12:19. Then, 12:20. Time was moving again. I finally reached the interstate. Cars, streetlights, life. I pulled into the first gas station I could find. The cashier looked at me with a confused expression. "Sir, are you all right?" I looked down. My hands were covered in mud. So was my jacket. But something else caught my attention. The passenger seat was soaking wet, as if someone had been sitting there, in the rain. I never told anyone. Who would believe me? A few days later, I opened my GPS history. The route wasn't there. According to the app, I had driven straight home. No shortcut, no forest road, nothing. I thought maybe it was corrupted. So I searched online. Every county road, every forest trail, every satellite image. There was no iron gate, no road, nothing. It simply didn't exist. Months passed. Eventually, I convinced myself it had all been a nightmare, until one evening, my younger brother called. "Hey, I think my GPS is broken." I froze. "What do you mean?" "It keeps telling me there's a faster route through the mountains." The blood drained from my face. I asked him one question. "What's the estimated time you'll save?" There was a long pause. Then he laughed nervously. "How'd you know?" "It says 18 minutes. I screamed into the phone. "Do not take that exit." Silence. Then, the call disconnected. I tried calling him back. Again, nothing. Straight to voicemail, for 3 days. Nobody could reach him. Police searched every road between Montana and Seattle. His truck was never found. Neither was he. A week later, I received a package. No return address. Inside was my brother's GPS. The screen turned on by itself. No battery, no charger, just one message. Searching for a faster route. Below it, one final line appeared. Estimated time saved, 18 minutes. I threw the GPS into a lake that same night. Sometimes, I still wake up at exactly 12:18 a.m., and every now and then, for just a second, I hear a calm voice beside my bed. "Continue straight."